knowledge of it to really make intelligent comments on it.
Bob, how do you feel about just the accusations that are being made about some of your members?
Anytime there are accusations made, we take them very seriously. Integrity in our conference is vitally important, and it goes right to the heart of the culture of the conference. And so I certainly am not going to prejudge any outcomes. There are lots of things that get bannered around in the media or that anecdotally come up and don't have anything to do with what's going on in the courtroom. So we're just going to have to wait and see, and we'll respond appropriately.
Well, Bob, there are team in your league that's specifically been tied to a pay-for-play scheme allegation that was, discussed in a federal courtroom. People want to know your reaction to those specific allegations.
Well, I'll react to those allegations when they become matters of fact. At this point, they are not that.
Is it a black eye for the conference, Bob?
Well, it's certainly a reason to pay attention and to try and learn as much as possible, but there's a sequential process that goes with it, and we're gonna respect that sequential process.
How will they become matters of fact? And there's testimony of people admitting to paying players or families of players.
Well, that's not accurate in all cases, and what gets said around court cases, what gets reported around court cases, is not necessarily gospel. There'll be a subsequent process that will involve the NCAA, and it's at that point that the conference will get involved. The conference and the NCAA have intentionally deferred to the federal government process. And until that process is complete, we can't begin down the path of that linear process. I'm not going to get into talking about the trial because I haven't read the transcripts. I don't have any inside information, and it's premature.
So you're unaware that both sides agree that it happened?
I have told you what I'm going to tell you about it.
Regardless of what the verdict is this still something that's going to be like a first test for the NCAA to get involved with the new committee to, review these things in a quicker manner? Is it likely to be some NCAA action regardless of what the verdict is in this, with the testimony that's out there?
I expect that there will be, and I think it could very well be a test of the new structure. As you're aware, they're in the process of appointing some outside board members as well. That may bring different thinking to some of the processes. There's a new enforcement process that's in place, but it's very much in its embryonic stages. I mean, it takes a while to transition from what we've been doing to what we are going to do in the future. But the significant aspect of that is that the changes that have already been made have allowed for the use of information from other proceedings, and previously that's not been the case. And so I think that alone makes this a different environment, and the fact that they're willing to use now documented facts from other proceedings, whether it be a court proceeding or some other investigation, I think gives the enforcement folks another tool that they haven't previously.
How significant is that in this case?
Or they're not documented facts. You just said documented facts from the trial. They can use them from the trial.
I don't recall saying documented.
Did you just say the documented facts from the trial?
They can use information from any other procedure that they would like to. What procedures they will use, what they will access is not known. I don't know how I could possibly comment.
How significant is that in this case, big picture? Forget Kansas, everything else.
Oh, I think it's very significant.
Yeah.
I mean, the opportunity, even some of the previous cases that have come down the path, they've gotten at other facts through other procedures. Maybe there was an issue with bank records, or there was an issue with past taxes, or those kinds of things, and the NCAA is, that's been the reason that they've gotten there. and been able to get the findings they've gotten because they've had access to the power of a subpoena and the weight of perjury. How that plays out in the new day is yet to be seen.
There are trials, plural, left next year, maybe beyond that. When, I mean, are we reasonably expecting the NCAA to get involved after all this has happened? Is done? These court cases are done?
I fully expect that they will.
Not before.
Not before.
What can be done to clean this up? I mean, is it too simplistic to say that allow athletes to go, you know, market their name and likeness, signatures, whatever?
Well, I mean, as you know, there's a court case in play in Oakland right now that is going to answer questions on what are the permissible benefits. The unfortunate aspect of that is the maximum becomes the minimum, and so if the judge comes back and sets a number, that'll be the minimum, and there's probably always somebody that's willing to try and pay more to influence decisions. And there's a lot of money involved in it, and some of it's being used in ways that it shouldn't be used. We've had everybody playing the NCAA tournament in recent years. We've had 7 of our teams in the Sweet 16 in the last 3 years. So I'd say there's a pretty level competitive field, yeah.
So you have the same champion every year, and you've not heard from a president or an AD that doesn't think there's a level playing field in the league?
I just asked that question.
Okay. You've had the same champion in this league every year, and they're part of a federal trial. The NABC president has text messages entered in a federal trial. Do you think there's a level playing field in this league, and are you hearing that from your chancellors and ADs?
I haven't discussed it with my chancellors and ADs.
They've never brought the trial up to you?
We haven't, not that I can recall it when we've, because everybody's aware that it's going on, but until we get to the process of being able to have it under the jurisdiction of the conference or under the jurisdiction of the NCAA, there isn't anything to do. So it's a linear process, and we're not there yet.
Does it seem like it's been that way for about 50 years, that people talk about cleaning up college basketball and nothing happens? Is this the point that it actually happens?
Well, I think all the best parts of college athletics and all the worst parts of college athletics are embedded in men's college basketball. They're high-risk students, they're high-risk kids from high-risk backgrounds. There's lots of outside intervention, and there has been for a long time. It's a risky environment, and the fact that the federal government's involved in it is indicative of that, I think. But there's still a process that we have to go through, and we're not at the point where athletic organizations can get involved in it.
Bob, at the core of this thing is that there's an athletic apparel company that wants one of its schools to succeed. Whether it's Nike, Adidas, whoever, how do you stop when all these schools have major apparel deals and stuff, and they all want their school to win, and they'll do whatever it takes, clearly, to make that happen? How do you stop that?
Well, I know people at all of those companies that are involved, and they operate with integrity and in the ways that I've encountered them. But clearly there's influence in the system, and to the extent we can manage it and control it, we ought to try and do that. And I think that will be the step that comes after it is rules that respond to things that have been raised in the court case.
Do you have any idea on the timeline?
Well, it's a great question as to how the timeline is affected by the additional pending court proceedings, and whether or not the NCAA feels like they have to wait till after those all 3 trials are over. I don't know. I'm not privy to those discussions, but I fully expect that there'll be a follow-on investigation as a result of what's come out in the court case.
Have you had any contact with anyone at Kansas specifically about any of the trial stuff?
Well, I talk to people at Kansas all the time, and I talked to Coach Self last night. I talked to Jeff Long on a number of occasions just to try and touch base and know as much as I could, but they're not at liberty to share information, and they haven't had a lot of information shared with them. And so, you know, we're all sort of in the same boat. But there again, it's a linear process. I'm not going to know it before they know.
What have your conversations with those apparel companies been like in regards to college basketball?
I've been at this 40 years. I've had lots of relationships with people at all those companies, and so the conversations didn't pertain necessarily to college basketball.
Bob,
they're just relationships that you develop over a long period of time.
I'm sorry, the narrative that this is how the game has been played forever, it's just now it's out in the open for everyone to see. How much stock you put in that kind of a statement about what was going on right now?
Well, I mean, I don't have a better way to express it other than that. You know, I spent 2 years as the chair of the men's basketball committee, and I was very close to college basketball at all the positions I worked at. I think it's easy to paint all of college basketball with a dark brush, and that's not fair. There's lots of great kids and lots of great coaches, and terrific schools that are involved in it. Are there bad operators out there? Yeah, there are bad operators out there, and some of them are inside of schools and some of them are outside of schools. But it isn't everybody. It certainly isn't the majority. And at this point, I don't know who it is and who it isn't because the NCAA hasn't run their process yet. So, you know, I think it's very easy to say everything's wrong with college basketball. Everything's not wrong with it. Horatio Alger is alive and well and living in the NCAA tournament, and it's a great source of opportunity. And for all the reasons we love March Madness, there's a lot of good in college basketball, but it isn't all good. And to the extent we can, we ought to try and fix it.
When you spoke with Bill Self last night, did you ask him directly if the things that have been said in the trial in New York, if they were valid, if they were true? Did you ask him specifically to respond to the allegations?
I would never ask him that because I know that he can't respond to it at this point.
So you did not ask him?
I did not, because I knew that he couldn't respond to me.